What's the mental thing that you do? Because one thing that happens when we play the same thing over and over, it actually could start working against you because you're so confident. It's a weird thing how that happens.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
mentality to keep it sharp and keep it like it's the first time that you played it?
That's a great question. And it's a couple of things I do. The first thing from a mental aspect, it might be my 1100th show, but it's someone's first time seeing the show. Right? And understanding that there are people that will save up all year. There are people that will literally do road trips just to come to see the show. Trevor, I've never seen anything like it. Where you have grown folk like dressing up like the Scholar Sisters or George Washington and different characters. You have little kids that know every lyric.
Right.
So for me, keeping the main thing and understanding that my job is to be as foundational and concrete as possible so that the actors on stage and my other orchestra mates can do what it's necessary for them to be able to have their best performance as well.
Trevor Beat Show. Trevor Beat Show.
What's the difference between a drummer who gets a gig and a drummer who keeps the gig? Well, today we're going to answer that question. My guest today is the definition of first call. He's held down the rhythm section for R&B royalty like Avery, Sunshine, and Peabo Bryson. But he didn't stop there. He took his pocket all the way to Broadway, driving the groove for the smash hit Ain't Too Proud, and currently he is the heartbeat of the biggest show on earth, Hamilton. He's a master of technology, a musical director, and the guy who you want to call when you need the job done right the first time. Please welcome the man with the golden pocket, Quinton Q. Robinson. What's up, bro?
Man, I need to hire you to do all of my intros, man. This is great.
Man.
That was great.
Thanks for
How
joining
you doing,
us.
man?
I'm good, man. I really appreciate you coming, man, especially, given this
course.
crazy schedule that y'all keep, man. And man, I'm glad we get to share this side of what's going on, man, because a lot of people only see one side, and
yes, sir.
You and I became fast friends. I mean, I'm a huge admirer of what you do, but also, we'll get into like that tech stuff and the setups and all that. So we'll dive right in, man. Give us a little bit of background about leading up to getting the Hamilton gig. So where are you from originally, and what's your journey been, as far as drums go?
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. So born and raised in Miami, did undergrad at the University of Miami, and I moved to Atlanta in 2010. But prior to moving to Atlanta, I was a theater kid. I grew up in a performing arts, elementary school, middle school, high school as a theater major.
Oh, wow.
So actually being an actor on stage.
Oh, okay.
So it's no surprise to my parents and people that knew me when I was a kid that like I ended up here because I've just been able to marry my two loves. Like, some people don't necessarily get a chance to have two loves. I always say I chose musical theater, but music chose me. I've been playing drums since I was 3 years old, born under a pew. So I started in church.
Yeah.
And, it just started from there. When I moved to Atlanta, I was more focused on playing behind artists. And in 2016, I got a call from Alliance Theater asking me to come in and play drums for this show that had Broadway aspirations. And I fell back in love with theater again,
Wow.
And from that time until now, even, my trek back and forth to New York has been to, solidify myself as a Broadway pit musician. And in 2020 is when I got that opportunity. A great friend of mine, and I call him my Broadway drumming mentor, Clayton Craddock, who is the original chair holder for Ain't Too Proud, but his resume is long. Memphis the Musical. He's getting ready to do Cats, the Jellicle Ball on Broadway. He gave me an opportunity to sub for him back in 2020. And shortly after that, they offered me the Ain't Too Proud tour. And I did that for a year. And maybe 4 months into that contract, I got the call from the contractors from Hamilton asking me if I would want to audition for the opportunity to be the drummer for the national tour.
Wow.
And that was 2022. Funny story, I told them no at first because Trevor, you know, in this business, your word means everything. And I had told the contractor from Ain't Too Proud that I would give him a year on the road.
I see.
And that's the first thing he asked for. And I was 4 months into that Ain't Too Proud contract when I got that opportunity from Hamilton. And, you know, also in this business, when you get an opportunity, you say yes and you figure the rest out. So I did the audition. After they offered me the job, I told them I'm going to have to respectfully decline because I was still in my contract with Ain't Too Proud and I didn't want to ruffle any feathers or do anything that would give me a bad name. And I heard back from the contractor and he said, we knew we had the right person from a musical aspect, but the fact that you're willing to leave money on the table just to honor your word lets us know that we had the right person from a personality perspective. And grateful to me because usually, you know, it doesn't happen that way often, but they actually held that chair for me until November. I got the call in June. They held the chair until November, and they just had like a series of subs until I was able to satisfy my contract when Ain't Too Proud. So
integrity,
you know.
Hey
Hey
man,
man.
hey, that's big.
It's a slow crawl. It's a slow crawl, but like when you know whose you are and you know that your name means more. My parents drilled that into my head. You know, I don't care how well you play, you know, how talented you are. If people can't trust your word, it doesn't matter. So,
exactly. And, you know, honestly, man, it's like at the end of the day, I just had that conversation with someone else. It's like, I don't know if we've ever met in weather where I had a short sleeve on. So my right arm, my whole forearm in the front says integrity in big, bold letters. So when you shake my hand, you got to look down at it. You know, it's important.
I like that.
It's important, man, because I was speaking with someone else that did the same thing. They had an opportunity and then they didn't take it because they were, you know, involved with something else. And that thing is historic and it played out and it did its thing, and you can do nothing but respect those type of decisions. So on the drummer side, man, I'm learning a lot, you know, since we've been friends and hearing that world, because that's a world that I'm not really familiar with. You know, I've only done a few things here and there, nothing, you know, like that you do. And it's amazing to me when you say stuff like, you know, people holding the chair for these things. And it's like, it's almost just like in the other type of music. You know, you got cats that are like standouts and that like have the gig, you know what I mean? And it's like, the thing that trips me out is that it's essentially the same thing every night. So when you're reading, you know, staff and just completely in what the, you know, composer is writing. And by the way, I worked on the remix album for Hamilton, so I know, you know, my folks, you know, we got folks in common, you know what I'm talking about? We got people in common, and those guys, Alex and all those guys are incredible, man, just a whole nother level.
And his ear is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Bro. He hears everything.
Yeah, so it's like, I know this particular musical, you probably have a lot more space than most musicals to actually have moments of you know, putting your thing in there. But when you first got it and you first wanted to approach it, what was the first thing you did? Did you listen to it and then start saying, okay, this is the kit I need to put together? How did that gear side, we'll start with the gear. How did the gear side evolve when you started getting ready to take this gig?
So I was on the tour, and any Broadway tour that you do, the gear that you are given, unless you start it. Like when I did Ain't Too Proud, because we were coming out of COVID, like I had the opportunity to essentially kind of make the kit what I wanted to.
Right.
But this tour had already been on the road, I don't know, 5 years. So they were kind of grandfathered into what they were used to doing. So I inherited the gear, but because I'm a lefty, they gave me a little bit more leeway to kind of like make the kit my own. So the first thing I did, say it again.
I forgot that. I don't know why I didn't remember you were a lefty, bro. All the times I've seen your setup.
Open-handed lefty with the ride on the left.
Oh, but you set up right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
just
why.
The ride is on the left.
Got you. Like Will and Gordon. Got you. Okay. Got you. All right. Okay.
Who are huge influences on me. I just told Gordon that at NAMM last week. He was like, man, I had no idea. I was like, yeah, man, it's like when, and we can get into that later, but like growing up in high school, like I didn't have YouTube. We didn't have these social media platforms where we can go and find people. So like, I thought I was broken coming up in high school because no one else played open-handed.
Right.
And I was getting so frustrated with that. And my mom let me stay up one night to watch the Arsenio Hall show. I was in high school and I was so frustrated. And and this was right after Terry Lynn Carrington left.
Right.
And the guy that came in after Terry Lynn Carrington was Chuck Morris.
Chuck.
And she let me stay up. And just so happens that night they did the dolly cam overhead. And it was one of those nights that Arsenio was like, Chuck, give me some of that sweat locker of funk, locked in the corner for 2 weeks funk.
Right.
And they did the overhead shot. And he was playing open-handed with the ride on the left. And that was the first time I had ever saw anybody that I could identify with.
Right.
You know, and we'll get into that because we're talking about Black History Month and representation and how what you see will change your perspective. And I saw Chuck and I was like, well, if Chuck is on television and he plays like I play, I can do it too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that kind of like sent me on this trek of finding other people, and I found Gordon Campbell, and I found Chris Johnson, and I found Nissan Stewart, and Will Kennedy, and Carter Beauford. And although he plays mirror left, Phil Collins, and then you got Simon Phillips and Billy Cobham. So anyway, but back to the gear. Back to the gear. So Pearl did a really good job of outfitting me with what I needed. And the first thing I did is I listened to the music. I went back to the original cast recording because what I wanted to do was capture the essence and the sound of what those drums were, because what was being played on Broadway.
Sure.
Right. And each tour, any tour that you have goes out is supposed to be pointing back to the Broadway show in New York. So I wanted to be as close to what was being played on the cast recording, because that's everybody was hearing the cast recording and the Disney recording, and I just wanted to be true to that sound. So that dictated, the size snares I was using and how I was tuning my drums, because I wanted to capture that and get it back to what it was when I first heard the music that gave me that feeling of, oh man, this is special.
Right.
So all of my companies that I'm involved with did a really good job of getting me what I needed and just helping to curate that sound that ultimately became, the Hamilton sound, the Hamilton tour sound.
And just for all of our fellow drummers, man, how many snares do you have in that setup?
5. It's 5 snares. It's 5 snares. So it's the main snare.
Yeah.
It's my main snare. It's the piccolo snare that probably gets played maybe 50% of the show.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot of piccolo in that snare, in that show. Popcorn snare, which I was using 4x10 soprano snare. And then it's the low snare with the big fat snare drum on it to get that big thuddy 70 sound. And then we were just talking about it, the Philharmonic field drum snare.
Yeah.
So I went with something a bit more modern. It's a maple mahogany snare, but the snares on the underside, there are only 3 snare wires, but they're flanked by 2 sets of catgut.
Right. So, gotcha.
Just to give that old school sound.
Yeah, man.
And that field drum is used maybe a couple of times in the show, but in music theater, and this even in the studio, whether you play it 100 times or 1 time, if it has to be played, you got to have it. So,
man, and that's the whole energy when you have to deal with a play or anything that you're requiring to play something that a composer wrote. Is our job to make that sound happen, man. And I mean, dude, it's got to be fun. I mean, I know, how many shows are you now? Do you keep count?
I lost count sometime during the summer. The last time I counted, I was maybe something at like 1,100 shows, something like that. Something crazy.
So
It's, you know, yeah,
that's
it's nuts.
unbelievable. So okay, so here's the other question now that's really people need to know this. When you've done something so many times, that's literally, you know, give or take, we'll say a plus or minus 5% exactly the same every night. What's
Mhm.
what's the mental thing that you do? Because, you know, one thing that happens when we play the same thing over and over, it actually could start working against you because you're so
Mhm.
confident. You might be like, "Oh, man," and then it's like, "Oh, wait a second." You know, it's a weird thing how that happens, you know?
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
mentality to keep it sharp and keep it like it's the first time that you played it? You know what I'm saying?
That's a great question, and it's a couple of things I do. The first thing from a mental aspect, it might be my 1100th show, but it's someone's first time seeing the show,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mhm.
And understanding that there are people that will save up all year. There are people that will literally do road trips just to come to see the show. Trevor, I've never seen anything like it. Where you have grown folk like dressing up like the Scholar Sisters or George Washington and different characters. You know, you have little kids that know every lyric.
Right.
So for me, keeping the main thing, and understanding that my job is to be as foundational and concrete as possible so that the actors on stage and my other orchestra mates can do what it's necessary for them to be able to have their best performance as well. That's from a mental side. From an application side, I've played this show so much. If a was to my head, I could play it by memory,
Right.
but I still read it. I still read it because it gives me a visual representation of where my attention should be,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to just winging it because, you close your eyes, you catch a vibe, the consistency may be there, but it might not be there to the point we are just talking about Alex Lacamoire. You
Yeah.
might do something a little different that pulls his ear, or you might do something that might even musically sound great, but it's not what the lighting or automation or
Mm.
sound team is used to, or the actors are used to. You do some crazy feel that you didn't
Right.
do before, and now they miss that entrance,
Yeah.
or, stage management says, man, that was good. But in that moment, you've missed the mark because you made that moment about you as opposed to being the smaller cog in the bigger wheel. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing, and understanding how to keep the main thing, and understand that you were there to do a job. I liken it to, what if you had a tire that was trying to be an engine?
Right. Right.
It's not going to work out well
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
You're not going nowhere.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So understanding what my job is, and that's the definition of a professional, honestly, in my opinion, regardless of genre. Understanding what your job is and being consistent in that job is the thing that not only allows you to keep working, but also keeps the phone ringing,
Yeah.
as well. So I would say for me, those are the things that drive it. Also, the fear of unemployment.
Well, yeah, that's another thing I was gonna say. It's like, yeah, exactly. So one thing about, the difference between doing like concerts with artists and stuff, like when you rehearse with an artist and you guys get ready for a tour and you go play, there's a plus minus that's gonna happen throughout shows, and
Mhm.
it's not gonna really affect too much, right? But in a
Mhm.
precision thing like Broadway, like you said, it could easily be tumbling dominoes where one thing affects and triggers something else, and then somebody does miss their
100%.
entrance and the lighting. So we, as musicians in that world, you have to be precise. And I know there's click involved. So
Mhm.
what, did you, I mean, obviously I know you don't have any issues with click, but how did you feel about, did you do any major renovations to the click since you've been on the gig? Like, did you say, "Hey, I like eighth notes all the time," or "Hey, I like
No.
this slate," or whatever? How does that work?
So a lot of times, and a lot of people don't know this because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's a Broadway show and they just threw it up. Like some tours might take 6 months. You're lucky if you get 6 months to work on a tour. Sometimes you
Wow.
coming in 2-3 weeks before, and then you out on the road. Um, before anyone sees the first iteration of a show, it's already been years in development.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Lin-Manuel Miranda started writing Hamilton in 2008.
Wow.
It didn't
Amazing.
see the stage until 2014.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And it didn't hit off Broadway. It didn't do the public until 2014, 2015. And then they started at the Richard Rodgers Theater on 46 in 2015. So like last year was their 10th year anniversary, but that stuff was already done. I know Scott Wasserman, and he's the lead programmer that did all of the Ableton stuff. That stuff was done. They sat in the room for 18 months just to develop the click, because it's not just press the space bar and then it goes to the end and stop. This show is an amalgamation of the click going and then stopping, and then the conductor, when he's conducting, directing the entire band back in and a new click starts. Because what Alex and Lynn wanted to do was give the actors enough room to be able to say their lyric or their lines without feeling governed by rhythm. So it allows it to contract and expand the way it needs to. So it's a living, breathing organism. So some nights, depending on who the actor is, if you have a principal that maybe drunk too much coffee, or you get what I'm saying? Like there are so many different things. So just because it's to a click, there's still very much a human element to it. But I inherited, what was already being done, because once again, whatever is being done on Broadway is the thing that also still has to happen out on the tour. So the same programming that they use on Broadway, so I had no say in, hey, I want eighth notes here, I want quarter notes here. It's like you play it as it lies, and you got to make it feel the way it's supposed to feel. The interesting thing about the click in Hamilton, though, is it is a reference point as opposed to it being the all in as far as click is concerned. When I did Ain't Too Proud, the click was there and you were to bury the click. On Hamilton, you kind of live in the gray. This show, for the most part, kind of leans on the backside of the click, because they want to create that space for the actors, and when you start thinking about some of the influences and interpolations that were used to create the music, a lot of that hip hop stuff literally kind of like lives on the backside of the click. And there may be one instrument that's kind of tied to the click to keep everyone together.
Wow.
But, you got to kind of sit back. And I've been fortunate enough to have orchestra members say, I don't even listen to the click because I know if you're on, we're good. And that's a great thing. But this show definitely lives in the gray area of what is the click and where it should be played. The drums on Hamilton are a little different simply because I am more like the connective tissue of where the actor puts it, where the conductor conducts it, and where our percussionist launches the click track. So for me, because if I go with any one of those entities separately, it's going to expose the other two.
Right.
Right. So in a perfect world, everybody would be in lockstep, but we're human. So like sometimes the actor may come in too late or too early, and the conductor's trying to right the ship. And so for me, it's to make it not seem that way. So a lot of times I'm kind of pulling everything together so that it can be cohesive.
So, and you answered a few things in that. So you guys use Ableton as your basis for all the tracks and what have you. And then you said the percussionist fires that off. The percussionist is the one that does okay. So that's an amazing hybrid thing to have to do, to play and have to deal with that. And then you mentioned earlier something, and you and I have spoke about this a lot, and I've relayed that on to my followers in the way of, I have a cart in Amazon now, a whole thing put together with basically the music chart reading setup that we both kind of almost have in common. And, you helped me a lot in the early times when I was trying to put it together for the show that I'm doing, and it's basically we're looking forward. Oh, and I'm didn't mention that you, for the most part in this, you're in your own place, in your own makeshift room that they built for you, right?
Yeah.
So tell us
Yeah, they
about
have a
that.
booth that they travel. Yeah.
Okay.
So that booth, the sound, the production company, they have this booth. I want to say it's 8 panels. It's about, I want to say maybe about 7 feet high. And it has windows in the front, and it's soundproofed, and there's metal framing. That metal frame, once it's deconstructed, it probably takes up half a truck by itself,
Oh, wow.
right? Yeah.
Wow.
Like, you could literally have a conversation on the outside of that booth, and
Wow.
while I'm playing, and not be affected by what's coming out of the booth. And that just really gives the audio team, the control that they need acoustically, because a lot of these houses that we go into are not acoustically treated for drums. A lot of these houses are, ballet halls or symphony orchestras where the acoustics is supposed to be louder for stringed instruments.
Sure.
And so now you take a house that was designed for string instruments, and now you want to put a drum set in there. Without that booth, you wouldn't be able to hear anything.
Yeah.
So for the most part, they try to keep me in the pit.
Yeah.
But there are some cities where the booth is too big for the pit, so then I go remote. Because and then at that, I'm either in the trap area or dressing room. Or one city, I was literally in the loading dock. They set me up right in the loading dock.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
that much, it's that much soundproofing where that didn't even, that's amazing, man. That's an amazing story. So, cause I geek out on this whole thing, and we read, we have our chart rigs, cause you and I talked about this, in the front of us on a monitor, and then, use air turn, shout out to air turn. And then we use pads to advance and go back. So it allows us to kind of still do what we're doing, but we're not turning our neck to the side, which is,
right.
Over time, man, drummers, we've been doing that for so many generations. It's terrible for your neck and your back, man. So, that's something that, we talked about, and I'm glad you put me on that, because I've been trying to turn on certain people, and a lot of people have been doing that, man, because it just makes more sense. You can be looking at the band better, or a conductor or a musical director ahead of you. There's not much on the side of you. The artist is never on the side of you if you're doing a show. They're
Never
usually
on
in
the
front.
side. Yeah.
So I think that's amazing, man, and your setup and everything's so modern. Now, what electronics? What's the deal with electronics with what you have going on?
So I'm a rolling guy.
Yes,
I've been a rolling guy. I will forever be a rolling guy.
That's right.
Shout out to Jules Thomas.
Come on.
Shout out to Darren Pfeiffer.
Come on.
But unfortunately, once again, we inherit whatever was being used on Broadway. So when you think about when that show was being developed, the Roland, none of the new Roland stuff was out.
Sure.
The most advanced piece of technology at that particular time was the Yamaha DTX-12. So that's what we're using. However, I'm only using it as a sound module.
I got you.
Because I have 2 pads that I use in front of me, and I have the Roland KT10 on the floor. So I use the Roland KT10 and 2 pads, trigger pads in front of me. Once again, so I'm not doing that, because the pad would usually sit off to the side, and just over the course of time, that's straining your lower back and then your obliques from having to do so much. And there are certain songs in this show where it's all electronics. It's just, me on the pads.
Right.
So I wanted something in front of me so I could align my spine and just kind of play with a little bit more comfort.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of something that you were talking about, not only is it great for, being able to, stay forward, but also a lot of times you realize that we don't get to dictate the amount of space that we actually need. A lot of times there's not a lot of space for a music stand.
Yeah.
Right? So being able to have an appendage that I can put my iPad or my screen in the middle of my kit,
Yeah.
Allows me to not have to rob Peter to pay Paul. I'm moving my cymbal over just a little
Right.
bit. That might not necessarily be where I really want it, but I got to get this music stand in here and
Right.
all of that stuff. That kind of AirTurn has eradicated that. So now I can put my iPad exactly where I need it and not have to worry about making my footprint bigger.
Yeah.
To facilitate a music stand. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. And especially if we have multiple page charts, it's like I
Mhm.
don't, how we used to do it, trying to fold stuff over 3 at a time, and if it's outside,
They
you gotta
still
have
doing it. You got
paper,
man,
a
you still
clip,
have some guys on Broadway that don't like iPads, and I'm like, I don't see how y'all do it, where they'll have 2
Oh,
music
man.
stands
Yeah.
welded together.
Yeah.
2 music stands welded together because the one piece of music is like
Yeah.
6 pages long.
Nah, man.
And I'm like, what?
No
We gotta
backlighting.
work smarter and not harder.
Yeah, man.
Like, what are we doing?
The backlighting, yeah, that's crazy. Real quick, if you're new here, welcome to the Trev Beat Show. Make sure you subscribe if you want to stick around. And for the regulars, if you ever feel compelled to throw some extra support our way, check out the membership options next to the subscribe button. It's strictly for those who want to help us do more, but your viewership is support enough. Now back to the show. So, now I know that, this is what you're doing now, but you also have done a lot of other stuff, and you've done some MD work too for artists like Sunshine, Avery Sunshine, and Peebo. When you're a musical director, it's like, and I've been in that chair, it's like you're not just a drummer anymore. Like, we have to understand that is just one part of our job, right? So it's like you're responsible for the band, you're kind of the boss of the band, but you're still the servant of the artist. So what's a big mistake that you see, younger people when they step into this role as MD, as so many people aspire to? What do you think is an issue, a big mistake that you see these young people making when they get that opportunity to have that role?
Well, I think the first thing is that they assume that the best player automatically makes the best MD.
Aha.
And that's not the case.
Right.
Being a music director is about understanding and being able to manage personalities
Yeah.
more so than your application on your instrument. Understanding that if you have a type A artist, you might not necessarily be able to have the bass player that's disorganized, who's a great player, but he's disorganized.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you got to play matchmaker as far as personality. Y'all really want to put this person on this gig, but I know the artist is, really big about correction. And if I know I got a keyboard player that has a problem with, regardless of how good he is,
Right.
if I know I got a instrumentalist that has a problem taking instruction,
Yeah.
maybe this is not the right gig for him. So understanding the personalities, that whether it be management, whether it be the artist, or even within the musical shell itself, understanding how to put a band together, and it might not necessarily be all of the best players or the superstar players. It might be the guys that you can get the best out of, and understanding how to relate to each one of them individually to create this greater work.
Right.
Some guys you may be able to say, hey man, you messing up, I need you to tighten up.
Right.
Other ones you may have to come in and say, hey man, you're doing a great job, but I just need you to work on this, this, and this.
Right.
And the other ones, you could just give them a look and they know exactly what to do. So leadership is something that cannot be ascertained just by how well you play your instrument.
Yep.
But also I think as drummers, I think the advantage that we have, well, at least for me, I never look at drums from a front line or even a sideman. I kind of consider myself to be more utility.
Right.
So if I'm looking at myself in a utility fashion, that means I'm looking from more of an architectural view.
Yeah.
And that's how I typically approach drums. And if you're, as an MD, if you're looking at the music from an architectural mindset, you see more than just the music. Okay, like yeah, that riff was dope, but we got background vocals doing a harmony here,
Right.
and that's being overshadowed. Or understanding the vision. And I think a lot of times the younger MDs are so music centric that they're missing the greater entertainment of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff that we play as musicians that gives us the oohs and the ahs and the goosebumps, it goes over the average person's head.
Billion%. Yep. Yep.
So for me, it's about undergirding what the artist wants for themselves and being able to convey that in a musical fashion.
Yeah.
I never understood this this world where we're in, where music directors will go to a shed to find their next musician. And the next thing you know, they're in people's DMs. Yo, the drummer we had didn't work out, or the bass player we had didn't work out, because you went after talent, as opposed to a person that can ascertain what needs to happen and play to that.
Yeah.
So,
Professionalism. So I noticed, the design in your studio back there, those are all, you said, scannable barcodes. And, that lets me know that you're a type of person that pays attention to detail. So tell me about the stage plot Q. Tell me about Q with the stage plots, because, I'm hearing that you are known for drawing these incredibly detailed diagrams just so crews wouldn't mess up your setup. Now, did you turn that into a business at some point? Did you start doing it for other people?
I have. So right now I'm working with a developer out in Seattle. And the reason why it has not come to market yet is because the final product on the app does not look like what it looks like when I code it myself.
I see.
And I know they say that perfection is the enemy of the good, but it has to have that same wow factor that it has when I do them personally myself.
Sure.
I've done them at this point, I've done Shantae Moore's, I've done CeCe Winans, I've done Kenny Lattimore's, Avery Sunshine, Anthony David, in drummers, God, Brian Fraser Moore, J. Rod Sullivan, the list goes on.
Crazy.
It just started off because I was doing a lot of work overseas, and I would get overseas and my entire writer would be absolutely wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And, we've all dealt with that. And I started thinking, I was like, well, if a picture was worth 1,000 words, an overhead, full color, high resolution diagram would, be worth 10,000 words. So I just started doing it for myself. And I'm a geek too. I used to go on the DW website, and just build drum kits
builder,
just because, And as a matter of fact, the first time that I did it, it was from DW's Kit Builder, and then they got rid of it. And then I was like, well, there has to be a way for me to be able to do this. So then the tech brain of mine started kicking in, and I started learning how to do it, and I started coding it. And so now, now I've expanded it to full stage plots.
Wow.
And eventually, it'll be like if you've ever been to the Container Store, when you're building the aesthetic of what the Container Store, what you want your closet to look like. What it's also doing is cataloging every piece that you will need, like to every screw.
Right.
So imagine, Trevor, if you're building your stage plot, your drums plot, and at the end of it, it still gives you the list of what you'll need.
That's crazy.
Right. So for every cymbal you put up, it's going to automatically add a boom cymbal stand.
Yeah. That's
and then you
perfect, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I already patented the idea. The idea is patent pending, so it belongs to me.
There it is.
And I just, before it comes to market, I need it to look and represent what I do by hand. And if I can't have that, it won't come out yet.
Man,
I'll continue to do them. I'll continue to do them by hand.
I'll go back to like maybe 2011. I was sitting in my studio, and man, I probably spent 12 hours between setting up the rack, taking the pictures, color coding all the rack parts, making a full diagram. I did a book I got it bound and gave it to my tech, laminated, bound, gave it to the tech.
Yep.
You can't screw this up now. This is
Yeah.
100% foolproof. Just put these things in there together. I've had the cases coinciding with the thing. It's like that concept is something that a lot of drummers have just left up to techs or whatever. I'm a hands-on guy, just like you're a hands-on guy. Sometimes certain things you got to make sure they're right because you're the one that's held account. If it's wrong, the tech doesn't get blamed if it's wrong. If it's us. So
no one ever gets the benefit of the backstory.
Yeah, so that's incredible, and definitely you got yourself an endorser when you come out. I will absolutely stand behind that because that concept is very needed. That's something that's needed, and I love solving problems, bro. So that's
yes, sir.
Amazing, man. It speaks to the kind of person you are. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, every interview, wait, can you hear that? Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Oh, it's the big elephant in the room, AI. That's what it is. So, I have that conversation with everybody in every interview I've been doing lately because it's such a polarizing subject. So tell me, you being definitely a tech person and somebody that I know is astute and is up on what's going on, what's your take on what's going on with AI right now?
Scripture says there's nothing new under the sun, right? And every so often, and because we're drummers, I'll just keep it to drums. Like when drum machines first came out, right? It was supposed to be this thing that eradicated the acoustic drummer, right? AI is just another form of technology and how people are trying to use it to eradicate the human element out of everything.
Right.
But it never works. It never works. I think, if we continue to look at things as competition, it becomes just that, right? And there are always going to be people that weaponize things or make things that are to the detriment to the human race.
Right.
AI is just the newest form of that. I think it has its advantages, but I think if we focus on continuing to make quality music or quality products and use the technological advances of AI to help us propel what we are doing for it, it becomes less of a competition thing. Because it's AI today. 20 years from now, AI is going to be, run of the mill and it's going to be something else. And if every time something new comes along, we feel like we got to go at arms with it as opposed to using it as a tool to help us evolve, it's an opportunity for us to evolve. Now, there are some things that I don't agree with. I don't agree with, the AI artist in, how AI can make music and use that as a way of, taking money out of artists' mouths and off of our food off of our tables.
Right.
But there is a part, we could use that to help us evolve into better people, into better musicians, into better humans. I think that's the key. I think the key isn't to eradicate it. I think it's to put it in its place.
Yeah. It's collab.
We are the ones that can evolve.
Well, exactly. And this is the thing that I say on the side of the argument, even when it has to do with music, is I say this all the time. If you were dope before AI, you'll be dope after AI. Like a lot of people are using it as a crutch and excuse for things that didn't happen before AI. We can't blame it now. It's like all you got to do is be more creative. And now one way to look at it is a lot of people will say, well, I couldn't afford to have this cat. I couldn't afford I couldn't pay for studio time. Of course, that's great because they got to record in this studio and all these things that end up being excuses. Those paywalls are gone, man. So it's like, if I have a vision as a, artist or photographer or videographer or, I want to make a commercial or whatever it is, you can do it now if you have the creativity, and that's what's going to shine through. Just like with music, we used to have this saying back in the day, no one cares about anything except what happens when you press play. So all this, how did it happen? We don't care about that. What does it sound like? What does it look like? What does it make you feel?
Make it dope.
You know what I'm saying?
Make
So
it dope.
I agree with what you're saying, and I feel like all the people I know that are actual creatives and actually contributing have that same philosophy. The people that I see that are just negative, and you know, I don't know if you saw my interview yet with Spud, but I was doing an interview live in NAMM. We had a heckler come up, man, and it was like, man, what's going on right now? First of all, be careful. But second of all, it's like, you know,
be careful.
Hold on now. But it's like, you know, but at the same token, it's like, man, it's just interesting to see this, how polarizing this is and how people are so emphatic. It's like, man, don't use it and do something better than what said collaboration would have yielded.
It's a distraction, Trevor.
Yeah.
It's a distraction. Like people, like how you use the difference between a stepping stone and a stumbling block is how you use it. It's the same thing.
Come on, bro. Come on, man. You're
you
absolutely
get what I'm
right.
saying? I think
100%.
It's a distraction. And I think you're gonna always have individuals. I mean, dude, let's just look at what studios are now. Like when Pro Tools first came out, it was the Antichrist. It was the devil.
Yep.
He was like, oh, you know, you get what I'm saying? It's like, so there's always gonna be something that, and my thing is like, if you was trash as an engineer on a DAT,
right,
you're gonna be trash on Pro Tools.
Come on, man.
You know, if you was dope on Pro Tools, if you was dope before Pro Tools, you're gonna be dope after Pro Tools. It's like, you know, instead of looking for crutches, I look for opportunities. And that's just like even being here in New York now, like the things, the different obstacles that come up being in the city now, like it's one of those things where it's just kind of like I can look at this as a reason why something didn't happen, or I can look for the opportunity to make it happen in spite of that thing.
Yeah.
You know? And I try to live my life in that way. I'm a black kid from Miami. I'm not supposed to be here. You know, it wasn't designed. It wasn't that, like, we want to talk about it?
Right.
Like it wasn't designed for me.
Right.
You know?
Yes, sir.
You get what I'm saying? And
1,000,000%.
History backs that up, right? So for me, I'd rather be the reason why something did happen as opposed to using the crutch, like you said, or the reason why it didn't happen. And I think it's easier. The lazy person will say, hey, I can't do this because that happened. Where the same person will take that same scenario and be like, okay, well, I can't do it that way, but if I do this and I go over here and I do it that way, I can still get it done.
Yeah.
You know, because that's where inspiration is.
Yeah.
And that's who we draw to, you know. There are battles that you had to fight in your life that I'll never have to fight in mine, simply because you found a way to overcome those things.
Right.
And then I can look at those things. And that's why I like guys like you, guys like Gordon Campbell, guys like
my old roommate,
Brian Fraser Moore.
We were roommates in '93.
Wow. Man, to be a fly on the wall in those conversations, man. But you know, there are guys, there are things in this industry. Shout out to Clayton Craddock, shout out to, you know, Bill Lanham, shout out to Buddy Guy, shout out like all of these guys
Hold on. Let me stop you there, because you're mentioning Buddy Guy from, I know, the Broadway aspect, right? But I need everybody to go and Buddy Guy or Buddy Williams?
I'm sorry, I said Buddy Guy, I meant Buddy Williams.
Yeah, Buddy Williams.
Hair.
Buddy Williams played drums on Luther Vandross records. I need y'all to go check that out. Check out the Luther Vandross records that Marcus Miller produced. Look up some of those credits. Now, this is another example of versatility and authenticity. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I now, Q, I have to tell you about something that I realized. I was doing a show with a friend of mine who has a big band by the name of John DeVersa. And, you know, let's talk, we know about this generation of Hamilton and the influence it had. The first time in my life that I've ever been at a show, I played a show, a young drummer came up to me and, you know, he asked, could we do a picture and everything? I said, cool. He's like, I'm in school. I said, cool, what are you doing? Now, everybody is like, oh, I'm going to go move to LA and play with so-and-so, and I want to go do this. He said, man, yeah, as soon as I'm done school, I'm going to New York. I'm going to Broadway. So to me, now and this is a young kid in his early 20s, to me, I feel like Hamilton and what you've done has something to do with that, because that's by far the biggest musical in his life. You know what I'm saying? So that, and I can't remember his name. I have it somewhere on my Instagram, but that to me is a big thing, because growing up, especially out here, we don't have Broadway, so it's a little different than being on the East Coast. But that was, we did it in school and it kind of went away. No one was ever having aspirations of going to Broadway. So, bro.
Dude, I was grown.
Yeah.
I was grown before I'll say it like this. There are certain genres of music. There are few that have been unpirated, right? And I kind of feel like the last two that way are your country music scene and your Broadway scene. And though there's no such thing as crashing the scene there, even your orchestras, like your symphony orchestras, there's no crashing the scene there.
Right.
Typically what happens, there is a doorway. However, someone from the inside has to open that door to let you in.
Yeah.
Right? And what I would tell, because I get DMs almost on a daily basis, or when I meet guys like, man, I want to do what you're doing. Man, anybody that's listening that wants to tread this path, I will tell you, you still got to be able to play real music.
Right.
Because these shows are not just, oh, let me put this music in front of you and play. It's you're pulling from other experiences. The reason why I can sit and play Ain't Too Proud and sound like Papacita and sound like Uriel Jones is because I spent time in corporate bands playing Temptations top 40 music,
Yeah.
So like it's not this linear path. Oh, I graduate and then I go and do this thing. You got to go and be in some good bands. You got to go and be in some bad bands. You got to go and you got to know what it means to play, 2 to 3 hours of continuous music. You got to know what it means to show up and not know the set and know how to make it work. Right. And I think a lot of these guys that are coming out, they see the Hamiltons and they see the Lion Kings and the Wickeds, and they're like, I want to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they forsake the lesson in learning how to play other types of music, which leads into your versatility. Being able to sit down at a drum kit when I'm hired by a music director. That music director knows that I am also bringing my years of experience, whether it be playing with Bobby Brown or Peebo Bryson or Avery or Anthony David, or playing in church or playing in the wedding bands, understanding what it means to be able to play forcefully, but not at a high volume.
Right.
Right. Yep. Not allowing the mics to do the work for me. I am my own mixer, mixing my own limbs to be able to be in a room with dancers that need to be able to feel me but not hear me.
Yeah.
You don't get that. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, like, 1,000,000%. Yeah.
That's and I know because you said it, you've done some of that stuff too. And okay, it's Black History Month. You got an elephant in the room. I got a black elephant in this room. And I'll say this. It's like unfortunately, we come in at a disadvantage because a lot of times they don't necessarily see us in these spaces, so they don't think that we know how to do it.
Right.
Right. And because of that, we have to be very cognizant of that and how we respond to being the only one in the room.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's a skill. Yeah, it's a skill.
So it's not just about the playing acumen as much as it is about understanding what needs to happen in these moments, and you don't get that unless you've done some backyard parties.
Yeah.
And play, or did a wedding band gig, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm pretty sure there are people, but those are exceptions to the rule. The experience is always going to win out. Like your track record speaks for yourself. Like when I moved to New York, I've been here consistently since about September. And everybody marvels at the fact that it was like, wow, man, you got here and you got right to work, you know. It was like, well, yeah, like reputation and resume allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a direct line.
Right.
You know, I did 4 or 5 years of touring on Broadway shows before being able to get here and have the notoriety and the trust
Right.
of these music directors to have me sit in their chairs simply because it was like, well, we see what he can do. I'm not this unknown, unproven entity. No different than when someone calls you for a gig. They know what they're getting because there's resume and there's reputation.
Right.
You know, so
yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
That's big, bro. That's the ball game. You know what I mean? It's like
100%.
we're the sum of everything that we've done. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you know, when somebody calls you, they're calling you because they feel like, oh yeah, he's going to be able to knock this out. And it always goes back to the thing that I'm always trying to impress upon this next generation of drummers, which is authenticity and versatility. And that comes from taking humbling yourself and learning about the genre of music or whatever music you're going to be needed and called upon to play. It's arrogant to just be, oh, they're going to call me for me and I'll just get through it. That's the arrogant approach. You know, anybody that does something great on any instrument, I was having this conversation with the other day, any instrument, somebody that's great at it can sit there and have a conversation with you about history. I don't care if it's traditional music from Africa or Cuba or any instrument, jazz cats especially, everybody knows that history, especially on their instrument. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's the most important thing, is to learn what you're going to do and be authentic at it. And then when that word gets out, it's going to be like you and like so many other people where there's a trust involved, because sometimes there's no time to get to know somebody. You have to I need somebody and I hope this guy works out, but I'm hearing all these positive things, so I'm going to take a gamble, you know? So, Q, man, you know, it's so great to have you, bro. We could sit here and talk forever and ever and ever, man. I you know, the drum stuff, man, I get excited about it. It's like, that's one of those things where we still keep, drummers most of the time keep that zeal about it. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I love sometimes just taking some drums down and then just to set them up again. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's just,
ask my dad about that.
Yeah, man.
I literally, I had to be in middle school, and the drum set that he bought me, I literally disassembled it just to see how it worked.
Yeah.
And put it back together. And for him, he told me this years later, he was like, that's when I knew you're serious about drums, for you to disassemble it and put it back together.
Yeah.
He was like, that's when I started paying attention.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, and he's like, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to distract you.
Yeah.
He was like, but I saw that. And that's when I was like, okay, this is something that I need to keep investing in. But while I got this platform, I'm going to give you your flowers, man.
Oh,
you have been, although we met at PASIC in 2024, I've been a follower of yours and your work. I've been a fan of you and your work for years.
Thank you, man.
You know, you want to talk about versatility, you know, being one of the drumming fathers of hip hop, one of the drumming fathers of the West Coast sound being played on acoustic drums.
Thank you.
And then to be able to flip that and go and play at Hollywood Bowl, and then flip that and go and play with a Herbie Hancock. You know, there are not too many people that can stand flat-footed in each one of those worlds, because anytime I heard you in each one of those spaces, it felt like that was the only thing you did because you were so good at it.
Thank you,
right?
man.
Like,
thanks, bro.
So I just want to say to you, being on the East Coast and from the East Coast, man, your reach and your influence musically and as a personality is widespread, and I got nothing but love and respect for you, man. And I appreciate this opportunity to come on your platform and, you know, share a little bit of my story, man. And although we play different brands of instruments, man, it's always a great time to always a great time to hear you play, and I'm always inspired when I get a chance to hear you play something, man. So
Well, I
yeah, I
appreciate
just
it,
wanted
bro.
to tell you that in a public forum.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you, man. And you know what? And I listen, I think that one thing people need to also understand is that, yeah, there's different drum companies. A lot of people know a lot of people, and there's a lot
Yeah.
more behind the stage, the behind the scenes you think. I used to be with Pearl. So it's like, all, the gang banging thing that happens with drums, and
Oh
drumming,
God.
it's really ridiculous. And and as a matter of fact, why don't you go ahead and make sure you shout out all your companies now that hold you down, so we can give them their flowers as well, because we need them in our lives too. So give everybody what you're currently playing and all that.
Shout out to Pearl Drums, Sabian Cymbals, Remo Drumheads, ProMark Drumsticks, Air Turn Solutions, All Clear In-Ears, Audits Microphones.
Yep.
Who else we got? Big Fat Snare Drum, Drum Dots, Ableton, Reunion Blues. The list goes on, but those are a few of the companies that allow me to be able to do what I do wherever I am and not have to worry about gear. I will say something real quick without going on a diatribe about it. To anybody listening to this, regardless of the brand that's on the front of the bass drum, play what inspires you. Play what gives you, when you play air drums or whatever you play, whatever that sound is that makes you want to get down and play that. We see it like we're at PASIC and at NAMM, and all of these guys know each other, and
Some
all
are
of these guys are
married.
1 degree of separation. Right?
Some may be married. You know what I'm saying? It's like and the
Yes.
outside doesn't know.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And you doing something silly at one company and you don't know that. You know what I'm saying?
Because you a discussion at a dinner table and not even know it.
And we have a mutual friend who we just spoke with, and that was one of the main things I told him. I said, "Hey, listen, man. First off, you gotta like whatever you play. So whatever decision you make, you gotta like the stuff. This whole thing about I'm just gonna be a soldier of fortune, it's very transparent to these companies, and it doesn't help them, because if a company can get with you at a certain point of your career and then you end up doing great things, it's much better than the 1 year or a gig of the week type of interaction. So they're looking for careers to be associated with. Because think about it, everything I've done, pretty much the biggest things I've done, I've always had DW associated with it. So it's a give and take. They can always piggyback off of anything I've done, pretty much record and live, because of the amount of years I've been there, over 20 years.
100%.
It's like, so it's a partnership thing. We got to look at it like Nike or
partnership.
We see that. And I talk about that all in the book. So if you guys in the description, the Musician's Pocket Guide to Endorsements, that's always going to be there. Volume 3 just came out. And Q, man, it's a wonderful, always a wonderful conversation with you, man. And you're speaking in such an articulate, high level. It goes to your musical acumen too, and now with the plots, and it all makes sense to me, bro. It's the same guy, a very, it all makes perfect sense, bro. So I appreciate you coming, man, and we'll have to sit down again. You're also a cigar aficionado like myself, so me, you, and Calvin, and all the rest of the cigar drummers.
Man, we got to make that happen.
Come on, Chris. Chris Hart and I get it in out here. We do our cigar hangs, but man, I want to do something on a national. I want to make a drummer, musician, cigar organization. We got to talk about that, man.
That would be incredible.
We got to talk
Count
about
me
that.
in.
We got to talk about that, man.
Listen, this is not Hollywood talk. This is not industry talk. Trev, if that is happening, count me, RSVP me right now.
Yeah, we putting it out there, so we're gonna see. Cigar companies, pull up. Let's have a conversation.
Come on, let's go.
Let's go. But all right, Q, man,
hey,
thanks again.
Know who we should talk to?
Who?
We should talk to Nick Perdomo, because Nick Perdomo is a drummer hobbyist.
Oh, wow. Crazy. And
he sent me a box of 25 when I did Ain't Too Proud. He sent me a box of 25.
Wow,
and
man.
I met him at PASIC in 2018.
Yeah.
And we kept in contact. So like we should definitely try to make something happen.
And what's the one It's one of the hottest new cigar companies, and the guy's like a billionaire. He's been on YouTube all the time. It's like one of the most popular companies right now because their warehouse, like his big humidor, whatever, it's right like 2X's up the freeway. I pass it every time I'm coming home.
I'm one of these creatures of habits, man. I don't know what's new out there.
Yeah.
I typically stick to what I smoke.
Yeah, I feel that.
But like, shoot, like, bro, listen, man, I'm a flight away.
Come on.
Don't throw me with a good time.
And I'm gonna be out.
Cigars.
Yeah,
what?
Come on, dude. I'm gonna be out in your way too in March on this hop that I'm doing. So I'll with this orchestra thing. So I'll reach out to you,
Absolutely.
man. And
for sure,
ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing a little bit of behind the scenes here, and I'm not editing this out because this is real life and we're actually friends. So, there you go. Real talk here on the Trevor Beat Show with Mr. Q Robinson. I'll see you on the next one, bro. Appreciate you,
Yes,
man.
sir. Appreciate you, bro.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, everybody. That's a wrap for this episode. I hope you picked up some gems today that you can apply to your own craft. Now, before you go, if you want to support what we're doing here, head over to the store. We've got the gear and the merch to get you right over there. Now, don't forget to check out our subscriptions to get exclusive access and tools to help you level up. That's down there, and hit the join button. And if you got value out of this, do me a favor. Smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment. Let me know what you thought about today's show. Thanks for watching The Trev Beat Show. I'm Trevor Lawrence Jr. and we out.
It's The Trev Beat Show and we out. We out. We out. It's The Trev Beat Show and we out. It's The Trev Beat